Israel may have crossed a line that carries implications far beyond the immediate moment. History tells us that moments like these rarely remain isolated. In international relations, actions are never just events. They are signals. Signals that are interpreted, remembered, and sometimes answered later in ways that defy prediction. There's a pattern that repeats across decades. A country takes an action it believes is limited, controlled, and strategically justified. But beyond that immediate calculation, other actors interpret it through the lens of their own interests, concerns, and long-term strategies. That is where the dynamics begin to shift. At first glance, this may seem like another episode in an already complex regional conflict. The Middle East has seen cycles of escalation before, and many observers have grown accustomed to seeing these developments as part of a persistent pattern. Yet others are asking a more probing question. Is this still within the same cycle, or are we seeing the early signs of something larger? Sometimes it is not the scale of an action that matters most. It is the location, the timing, and the network of interests attached to it that carry weight. Recent reports describe a strike targeting infrastructure linked to Iran in the port city of Inzali along the Caspian Sea. As is often the case during periods of tension, details remain scarce and interpretations vary widely depending on the source. Some frame it as a tactical maneuver, others see it as a strategic signal, while a few analysts argue that the real significance lies not in what was hit, but in where it happened. Inzali is not just another port. It is a node in a broader regional system that connects economic routes, logistical corridors, and geopolitical interests. Over time, this area has become increasingly vital for countries seeking alternative pathways for trade, energy, and supply chains. When viewed on a map, the Caspian Sea stands out. Unlike open oceans, it is enclosed, bordered by a small group of countries: Russia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan. This makes it less an international open space and more a shared strategic zone. For years, this zone has maintained relative stability, not because tensions were absent, but because an understanding, spoken or unspoken, ensured that stability served everyone's interests. Trade flows, energy exports, and regional cooperation all depended on that balance. That is why any reported military activity there commands attention. It raises the question, does this signal a shift in how the space is treated? From one perspective, the reported strike may be part of a broader effort to disrupt perceived threats or supply networks. From another, it introduces uncertainty into a region historically managed with careful consideration. When uncertainty enters a previously stable system, reactions begin to form. Russia, for instance, has spent years developing economic and logistical corridors that thread through this region. These routes are often discussed as alternatives, ways to maintain trade and movement despite external pressures. So when activity occurs there, it is not just about one country or one target. It is about how that action may affect a wider network. Interpretation becomes critical here because, in geopolitics, perception often matters as much as reality. An action intended as limited can be perceived as expansive. A move that is tactical can be interpreted as strategic. And once interpretations diverge, the situation gains complexity. Following the reports, official statements from Russia expressed concern about potential escalation. Such responses are not unusual. Governments frequently use public messaging to signal boundaries, communicate expectations, and influence the behavior of others. Yet statements alone do not determine outcomes. They form part of a broader process, one that includes diplomacy, internal deliberation, coordination with partners, and long-term planning. It is crucial to recognize that countries do not act purely on impulse. Even in moments of tension, decisions are calculated, layered, and influenced by multiple factors. Stepping back to observe the broader picture reveals why the Caspian region matters so much. It connects to larger systems, energy networks, trade routes, and economic relationships extending far beyond its immediate geography. Stability. There's not just a regional concern. It affects markets and policies across multiple continents. Even the perception of instability can ripple outward. Markets react, governments reassess, strategic planners consider new scenarios. This brings us to strategic signaling. In international relations, actions are often messages, ways of communicating intent, capability, or willingness to act. But those messages are not always received as intended. Sometimes they are amplified, sometimes misunderstood. Sometimes they trigger responses that were never part of the original calculation. Moments like this require careful analysis because the immediate event is only one layer. Beneath it lies a network of relationships, expectations, and potential reactions. Another factor to weigh is the nature of international partnerships. Not all country-to-country relationships are formal alliances. Many rely on shared interests, economic ties, or regional cooperation. These relationships can influence behavior without creating automatic obligations. This flexibility can stabilize the system, but it can also generate uncertainty. When a situation evolves, other actors must decide how to respond without a predefined script. They must weigh their interests, assess risks, and choose a course of action. That process takes time, and during that interval, narratives begin to form. Media coverage plays a significant role here. Different outlets highlight distinct facets of the same event. Some focus on immediate actions, others on broader implications. This variation shapes public perception, sometimes simplifying complex realities. A critical mindset is essential, considering multiple perspectives and recognizing the limits of available information. In fast-moving situations, certainty is often the first casualty. As details emerge, interpretations shift. What initially appears one way may later be understood differently. This is a normal feature of how complex systems evolve. Looking ahead, the key question is not only what happened, but what happens next. Will this incident lead to increased tension, or will it trigger efforts to stabilize the situation? Multiple paths exist. Diplomatic engagement could intensify as countries seek to prevent further escalation. Economic considerations may influence how different actors approach the situation. Strategic adjustments might be made quietly without public attention as governments reassess positions. Yes, the possibility of further tension exists, but it is only one scenario among several, not a certainty. What matters most is how decisions are made in the coming days and weeks. Geopolitics is not static. It is a continuous cycle of action and response, shaped by immediate events and long-term strategies. Another dimension to consider is global interconnectedness. Events in one region can influence dynamics elsewhere. Supply chains, energy flows, and financial systems link countries in ways that were far less pronounced in the past. This interconnectedness means local developments can have global consequences. Managing these developments requires coordination, clear communication, and often restraint. Moments like this test those capacities. They test how well systems absorb shocks, how effectively countries communicate, and how willing they are to prioritize stability over escalation. This brings us back to the central point. This is not just about a single event. It is about how that event fits into a larger pattern and whether the pattern is shifting. If it is, then we may be witnessing the start of a new chapter, shaped not only by actions, but by interpretations, decisions, and, most importantly, by how different actors navigate uncertainty. The situation is still evolving. More information will emerge. Interpretations will shift. Decisions will be made. As clarity improves, the picture will sharpen. Until then, the most important approach is to pay attention not only to what is happening, but to how and why it is happening. In geopolitics, understanding the process is often more critical than predicting the outcome. If you found this analysis helpful, share your perspective in the comments, like and subscribe for more updates on evolving geopolitical events.